Can you briefly summarise madness as methodology?
In a way, the book and the phrase is meant to describe what is being called in post-qualitative inquiry a kind of non-methodology. Methodology is being really problematized now by a lot of post-qualitative inquirers. I've used the notion of madness because it's not meant to refer to individual people, madness of people. It's not that kind of madness. It's madness in relationality. It's a kind of, if you like, an eccentricity of approach. It's doing things unusual in perhaps unaccepted kinds of ways. Yeah? So the idea is that the madness brings a certain spirit to it. It brings this sort of eccentricity, experimentalism, so I've used that word possibly to be a little bit provocative, yeah, but at the same time to really sort of try and display what my attitude to being non-stroke methodological actually is.
What inspired the book?
I mean, a lot of things really. My background is in philosophy. I've always done philosophy, what I consider to be philosophy. So philosophy is a big part of what the book is about. I've worked in education for 40 odd years, so I've always brought unusual and different and creative practices to education. And I think working with a lot of people in different conferences, having colleagues in performance studies, philosophy and so on, it made me think the time is right, really. I think there's a real need to challenge the dominance of traditional and orthodox approaches, yeah, which are driven by policy, they're driven by measurability, they're driven by audit cultures, and I think it's time that we really need to challenge those kinds of things. So I'm hoping that getting the book out there will help to offer up to a wider audience that there are different creative, experimental, unorthodox, mad things, ways of doing research.
If we keep doing research in the same way it's always been done, are you actually limiting what you're ever going to discover?
I think you are, because you're putting boundaries around what it is you're planning to inquire into, and you're only really doing research on things which are kind of easily measurable. And I suppose what I'm trying to do in my work in post-qualitative inquiry, and a lot of my colleagues who are mentioned in the book are also doing, is to say, look, there are things that are subtle, there are things that are nuanced, there are things that are hidden, there are things that emerge in the moment, that we need to pay some sort of attention to those things as well in our research practices. Yeah?
Things that can't be found.
Yeah, or certainly can't be found easily. And I think there's also, and this might come out later on in our discussion, I think it's really important to think also not necessarily what does methodology or research or inquiry actually mean, but what does it do? Yes. Yeah, how does it perform itself? How can we make it work? Deleuze and Guattari have a phrase that, if you've got a good idea about something, rather than sort of describe what it means, plug it in and see what happens as a consequence of doing it.
Do you think that without a willingness to try new methods, there's a danger of not moving forward in our understanding of the subject of our research?
I definitely think so. I think there's definitely a huge amount of work being done in, for example, quantum physics, for example. People like Karen Barad, Don Haraway and others are drawing upon that work, and I think that we can learn a huge amount from those revolutionary advances in scientific thinking in terms of the kind of research that we do in human and post-human spheres. So I think there's still a lot to be done, I think. I think working with different senses, synesthetic approaches, those kinds of things, particle theory, they all sound very science-oriented, but I think there is a way in which we can bring, now that we've opened the door to post-human inquiries, to post-qualitative inquiries, I think the opportunities to draw upon other kinds of practices, other modalities, other ways of thinking, such as quantum approaches, offers really exciting opportunities. I'm finding increasingly coming along to conferences and listening to young, doctoral students who are coming up with some amazing stuff. Something's opening those doors, and I have a feeling that it's people like us who are beginning to propose these kinds of post-qualitative and non-methodological approaches. I hope, anyway.